Well, they're certainly opening the champagne in the party behind us, where Marine Le Pen's party is holding their electoral evening. But really, as the guest earlier said, this isn't much of an upset. The Rassemblement National National Rally were expected to top the poll in France. They did so, of course, in 2014 when these elections were last held. And they've probably lost seats since then, is probably what we'll find once they get counted up. And they didn't, of course, manage to change the shape of Europe very much in the 5 years that they've been in the European Parliament. The main reason they've generated headlines was for a spending scandal where the European Parliament is trying to reclaim more than €6 million that they illegally spent on paying their staff. The difference, though, between now and 5 years ago is that Marine Le Pen now believes that she has more allies in Europe with people like Germany's AfD or Matteo Salvini in Italy, and that those groups can come together and change the shape of Europe in a more nationalist direction from within. And that, according to her, is why she's stopped calling for France to leave the European Union. But from Macron's point of view, this actually is much less bad than might have been expected. His party is, according to estimations, only about 1.5 points, maybe even less than that, behind the National Rally. And that means that he's run her pretty close, which perhaps wasn't quite expected, given that these European elections are always used as a protest vote by people who are discontent with the government. We have seen a lot of discontent over the last 6 months here in France, of course, with yellow vest protesters taking to the streets. So perhaps what's more surprising is that there is that much support holding up for the president.
Okay, Elena, I mean, it's often said that Europe is seen as on the one hand, an economic giant, but on the other hand, a political dwarf. Looking at some early trends that we've been reporting, what consequences will this have on the composition of the new map of European politics?
Well, for Macron, the consequences of coming second are, of course, means that he won't have the same amount of weight he was hoping for at the European level to try and pull strings in the political game of horse trading that begins tomorrow morning in Brussels and get the people that he wants into key European jobs. Now, his En Marche party is going to be joining the centrist bloc in the European Parliament, which looks like to be the third biggest after the Conservatives and Socialists. It's going to need to be making deals with those parties in order to push forward centrist candidates that Macron would like to see into top jobs. But it's certainly true that if he'd shown that he'd convinced the French public and come top of these polls, his leverage on the European level would be higher. Nevertheless, though, it looks like his party is going to end up with more or less the same amount of seats as Marine Le Pen's National Rally. And everything in Brussels is about alliances between different countries. It's about horse trading between different countries. It's about who your friends are in the European Parliament. So there's two big questions, really, at a European level that are left by this French result. One, whether Le Pen can really broker deals with other nationalist parties when they have quite different agendas. And another on whether Macron is now too weakened to push through some of his big policy ideas to other European leaders.
All right, Elena.